A lieutenant commander tells Captain Bright, the commander of White Base, about an important mission that must be carried out before their assault on Gibraltar. He says Admiral Gop, their leader, will soon pass through Las Palmas, aboard the La Granpa. However, before he does, they must take care of the situation on Alegranza. Confused, Captain Bright asks if there are really remnant operatives on the island. Affirming so, the commander says 2 of their Gundams were destroyed by enemies hiding on the island, adding that they're no mere remnants but rather operatives who've been left on the island for a special mission. When Commander notices Captain Bright's hesitance, in an attempt to intimidate him, tells him his prototype Mobile Suit Gundam that he so proudly delivered to them is now considered a mere suit, as it's now in mass production. Nonetheless, Captain Bright isn't moved. He suggests they assign the mission to another unit. Enraged and disappointed, the commander yells that the military is all about unit formations. He thinks an independent fighting force like the White Base is suited to dealing with individual objectives. Then, standing at ease, he says they're the General Staff's orders, commanding him to mop up the remaining enemies on Alegranza with all the fighting strength at his disposal. Captain Bright informs his team that their mission is to wipe out the remnant operatives on Alegranza. He says Alegranza is an island in the northernmost point of the Canary Islands, with most of its facilities damaged and unused for years. When Petty Officer Kai mocks the mission as mopping up on an uninhabited island, Captain Bright assigns him to sortie in the gun cannon. Then he commands Warrant Officer Amuro to join him with the Gundam, with Chief Petty Officer Job to pilot the gun Perry, and Petty Officer Hayato declared the gunner. Having been previously assigned a different mission, Amuro looks on, stunned. When he asks if there was a mistake somewhere, Captain Bright coldly tells him to stop thinking he'll remain a prototype forever and shouldn't expect any special treatment, but should rather follow commands. While departing, Ms. Sele tells Amuro she has a bad feeling about the mission and wishes him good luck. While heading to Alegranza, Kai curiously asks what the captain meant by remnant operatives. Smartly, Job tells him they're referred to as agents who were intentionally left behind by a withdrawing force for the purpose of sabotage and espionage. Nonchalantly, Kai calls it a crappy job. Suddenly, Hayato reports thick dark clouds ahead, which they consider very strange. Captain Bright wonders if he was too harsh on Amuro, and Mirai answers in the affirmative, telling him he should be gentler next time. Solemn, he apologizes. At the same time, Hayato reports that they're right above the island, but it's covered up by thick clouds. As Job peers through the clouds and sees a large gaping hole in the ground, he gazes in awe. At the White Base, an officer alerts everyone about an incoming transmission from the gun Perry. Taking his seat of command, Captain Bright directs a video to be put through on the main monitor. Back at Alegranza, the team surveyed the island carefully. After spotting a gun Perry and a ground scorched from combat but with no signs of Gundams, Captain Bright commands them to touch down for recon in force. After landing, Amuro and Kai get in Gundams, ready to explore the island. Suspicious, Kai advances closer to the lighthouse. When Captain Bright asks him to report his status, Kai stutters. While contemplating an answer, a group of kids begins to hurl rocks at his Gundam, asking him to leave their island. Kai is shocked, as they've been earlier informed that the island was empty. Panicking, he attempts to take a step back but almost steps on the kids. Afraid, they run off, cursing him. Meanwhile, Amuro follows a track to the edge of a cliff. When Kai tries to warn Amuro that the island is inhabited, he impatiently shuts off the communication. While observing the tracks and how it's mysteriously vanished, Amuro is ambushed by a Zeon Zaku, attempting to push him off the cliff. Panicking, Amuro tosses his weapon into the water and shoves the Zaku away. Now drawing a weapon, the Zaku attacks again, but Amuro blocks. As he takes a swing at it, the Zaku backs off fast, to Amuro's bewilderment. Again the Zaku attacks, backing Amuro toward the edge of the cliff. Suddenly, the cliff begins to crumble, sending Amuro crashing into the water. Kai returns to the gun Perry, wailing that the island is inhabited by children. When Job tells him he can't contact Amuro, Kai admits the same. As they desperately try to contact Amuro amidst the raging storm, Captain Bright commands them to pull out. When Job asks what's to be done about Amuro, Captain Bright promises they'll continue the search later. With the team leaving, Captain Bright asks Lieutenant Slegger to find Amuro. Meanwhile, after a series of nightmares, Amuro wakes up in an unfamiliar home. Weakly, he grabs a water bottle and gulps it. After feeling much better, Amuro hears some kids giggling outside. Approaching the door, he starts to feel dizzy, but he stables himself, realizing he has a bandaged head and arm. Amuro checks the doorknob. Finding it unlocked, his face lights up in surprise. Tiptoeing out, he comes across a goat that startles him, bleeding. As it forces him back, 2 kids run in, calling to it. When they spot Amuro, they run back out, yelling in fright and warning Doan, a former pilot of the Brown Southern Cross Squad. Doan looks at Amuro as he steps outside, obviously not surprised. Suddenly, he tells Amuro he should have stayed in bed. Determined, Amuro goes to him, amidst angry stares from the kids, and asks where his mobile suit is. Resentful, the kids say they ought not to have saved him, as his kind only bring trouble to their island. Ignoring their hateful gazes, Amuro goes out in search of his Gundam. When the kids begin to get anxious that something bad may happen, Doan calmly tells them not to worry. Amuro looks all over the island, but finds nothing. While stumbling forward, he nearly slips down a cliff, but thankfully steadies himself just in time. As he looks around at the darkness, he realizes his search for the Gundam might as well be hopeless. In the meantime, the kids eat dinner excitedly. When Doan notices Kara is worried about Amuro, he gives her a water bottle and asks her to go find him. While staggering forward, Amuro sees a lamp's reflection and heads for it. Finally coming across Kara, he pants in relief. When she gives him the water bottle, Amuro happily gobbles it. Curious, she asks how far he walked, and he tells her he got to the edge of the big crater. Astonished to hear this, she tells him they have enough dinner ready for him. As they head to the lighthouse, Amuro notices the light is broken. Kara tells him the generator got damaged and Kukura's Doan has been too busy to fix it. Surprised, Amuro wonders if the man's name is really Doan, which Kara affirms as being true. In the meantime, the kids talk about Julian, whose birthday is the day after tomorrow. Doan promises to celebrate it for the kids. When asked what he wants for his birthday, Julian says the lighthouse. He wishes to see the lighthouse get fixed so the house can be bright again. The other kids believe they can make ice cream for Julian's birthday when the electricity is back on. As Kara and a shy Amuro step inside, the kids welcome Kara and frown at Amuro. Kara asks him to sit, but the glare from the children makes him uncomfortable. When Amuro goes to sit, the children look away, equally uncomfortable. Braving up, Amuro takes a seat at the table, and Amado, who's sitting closest, scampers out of his seat, afraid. As Kara serves Amuro dinner, the kids accuse her of being unfair, since it's been decided that only those who work get to eat. When Amuro stiffens, ashamed, Doan tells him it's alright to eat and that he can start working on his food tomorrow. Gladly, Amuro lustily devours his food, then he introduces himself to everyone as Amuro Ray. When the kids start to recite their promises to Doan before heading to bed, it dawns on Amuro that he's had a misconception about Doan. In Belfast, General Revel shows Elrin, a junior officer, the second big Trey warship, called Malka. He says the great thing about it is that it's an amphibious hovercraft that'll be launched from Belfast, across Great Britain and the North Sea, before coming to shore at Danzig, then they'll be moving south across the Polish plain and capture Odessa. Since there's a war ongoing, he intends to send the White Base to Odessa, so they can be at his disposal. After learning he's been transferred to the Northern Army, Captain Bright bangs the table, angry. The lieutenant commander informs him that it's an order from the top and his ship is to head for Belfast effective immediately, with an order to abandon their current mission on Allegranza for some other unit to take over. Upset that they'll be losing their chance at rescuing Amuro, Captain Bright shuts off the communication. Later, the captain tells his team that they're heading for Belfast at once. When the team looks terrified at the announcement, worried about Amuro, Captain Bright tells them it's an irrefutable order. When Mirai suggests they plead with Admiral Gopp, Captain Bright gives her a hard stare and instructs the team to be on standby. After he walks away, Slegger mischievously asks Kai if he's willing to break an order, to which he agrees, with a sly smile. While in a meeting, General Mkyov, the supreme commander of the forces of Xi'an, tells General Gopp to halt his assault on Gibraltar. Unbothered, General Gopp asks to know if it's an offer of surrender. General Mkyov, in a desperate bid to redeem his pride, informs him that preparations have been made for Washington, New York, London, Paris, and several other cities to be annihilated. Humored, General Gopp and his officers laugh. Tauntingly, General Gopp reminds him about Hitler in the previous era, who'd failed to bomb Paris after swearing he would. General Mkyov assures him he's different, as he has no traitors in his army who will go against his commands. In Casablanca, the Brown Southern Cross Squad Xi'an Zaku eliminate rival Gundams in the war. After the battle, Lieutenant Waldo says he's interested in meeting Doan and knowing how strong he really is, and if perhaps he's better than the Red Comet. Annoyed, their leader holds a blade to his throat, saying Doan betrayed them and his name is not to be mentioned again, because he's now the leader. In the meantime, Amuro is unable to sleep. As a child, Lupe cries for light. After Gisela brings in a lamp, Lupe finally goes quiet and falls asleep. Doan, feeling guilty, recalls the battle that eliminated Lope's parents, which had made him quit the Southern Cross Squad. As a result, when Kara comes in bringing water, she tells him Lope has finally fallen into sleep, and since she noticed his lamp is still on, guessed he's working and decided to bring him water. Grateful, Dawn thanks her and promises her a comfortable life once the war is over. Drawn to tears, she asks him to stay alive, as they wouldn't survive with him. The next day, while the kids are doing their duties, Amuro quietly appears and offers his dishes from last night to Kara. After thanking her, Dawn invites him to work on the farm. When Amuro begins to hoe the ground awkwardly, the kids laugh at him. Kara, who's starting to like him, flushes in embarrassment. While working, Amuro discovers dark soil in the ground, and learns a confession from Dawn that the soil is used to grow their plants. Tired of hoeing, Amuro says he's going in search of his Gundam, so Dawn offers him his cap and water bottle, telling him to be back before dark if he can't find it. Back at the White Base, some kids shut themselves up in a room, determined not to leave until they find Amuro. After several pleadings fall on deaf ears, Slegger shows up, saying he's bought ice cream and they're about to melt. Excited, the kids hurry out, only to get caught and taken away. Looking grim, Slegger asks Kai and Hayato if they're ready to take the risk of getting punished, to which they equally agree. While heading out, Slegger tells Kai and Hayato they'll be piloting 2 mobile suits while he takes a Gundam. After learning the Gunperry can only take 2 mobile suits, Slegger asks Ms. Seele to pilot him in a core booster. When she declines, Slegger decides he'll pilot it himself. Meanwhile, Amuro wanders around in search of his Gundam. After spotting a Gundam footprint, he tracks it to the last spot he stood at prior to being attacked by the strange Zaku. Arriving at the edge of the cliff, he peers down but sees nothing. He hangs his head, dejected. As it begins to rain, Amuro runs to the lighthouse. At the same time, the kids play in the rain. When the rain stops, the kids take the collected water and happily match it to fill them in the tank. When Kara reports to Marcos that water isn't flowing out of the tap, Marcos checks the second tank, worried, and discovers it is empty. Quickly, he alerts Dawn about it. As the kids gather out, sad that there'll be no water on Julian's birthday tomorrow, Amuro marches on to them, exhausted. After learning there's no drinking water, he offers to follow Dawn and Marcos to go repair the pipes. At the pipes, Dawn emerges out of a hole and reports that the motor still runs, however, the hole gets too narrow for him to reach the pipes. He suggests Marcos gives it a try, seeing he might just be small enough to fit in the space, but Marcos is anxious and unwilling. All of a sudden, Amuro offers to go. As Amuro descends down the hole, a rock gives way underneath his feet, making him clutch a huge rock in fear. Finally finding the broken pipe, he sets to work and begins to repair it. When water begins to gush out at the lighthouse, the kids shout excitedly and run off to welcome Dawn, thanking him, but Dawn tells them Amuro fixed the pipes. As the kids thank Amuro, Marcos walks away, jealous. The next day, as Dawn sets out to leave, Kara, concerned, wonders if he's heading for a difficult mission, but he simply tells her not to worry about it. As soon as he leaves, Marcos runs off in pursuit. Just then, Amuro also heads out with a rope, intending to climb down the cliff. After his descent, Amuro comes to an opening in the mountain, and peering through it, he discovers it's a hidden base. Suddenly, Marcos calls Dawn, demanding Amuro's Gundam. He says he wishes to support him and protect the kids, but Dawn coldly refuses and tells him to go home. Amuro interrupts them, demanding his Gundam. He says he's been in control of it since Side 7, to Dawn's surprise. Dawn recalls he's seen the Gundam slay countless Zeon soldiers who used to be his comrade. Consumed by hate and jealousy, Marcos attacks Amuro, knocking him down and overpowering him in a desperate attempt to impress Dawn. After Dawn commands him to stop, Marcos says since he's stronger than Amuro he deserves to pilot the Gundam. However, Dawn is unimpressed. He commands both boys to go home. Later, Dawn walks alone into his control room, where he's been successfully disrupting Zeon's signals. General Mkyuv sternly demands why their point CA isn't responding. Flustered, Uragang, a commander, reports it's due to accumulated Minoisky particles. General Mkyuv doesn't believe it. He's convinced someone is jamming their communications. Resilient, Uragang argues the possibility of it, believing the operatives they left behind have repulsed many Federation search missions and are defending Point CA at all costs. Unyielding, the general believes it could be the saboteur attacking the Federation and orders for a search party to be sent out immediately. When the Southern Cross team is called upon, they're instructed to find the saboteur, eliminate them, restore the system swiftly, and perform a manual missile launch. After getting dismissed, Officer Danon curses the mission as boring, but Lieutenant Waldo thinks it's good. He believes the saboteur might be Kukura's Dawn. Excited by the thought of seeing Dawn, Danon begins to celebrate. Incensed, Lieutenant Adler, the leader, punches him in the face, reminding him he's warned him never to talk about Dawn again. Meanwhile, Amuro helps Marcos up the cliff. After he makes the climb, panting, they discover thick clouds forming in the sky like it's about to rain. At the same time, Kai and Hayato get ready to head for the island. Ms. Sele quietly joins the team, finally agreeing to pilot the core booster, and Slegger rides happily on top. As they take off, Captain Bright gets a transmission from the lieutenant commander at headquarters, who's upset that they haven't departed for Belfast. Pretending to be in a hurry, Captain Bright puts out fake calls and reports that some engines are either broken or not working properly, and with that he announces that their departure will be delayed. After ending the transmission with a sigh, Captain Bright is alerted about large aircraft approaching from an unusual direction and heading for Alagranza. Captain Bright shivers at the news. Amuro and Marcos run home, desperately trying to beat the rain. The kids scream in fear over the noise of thunder. Arriving inside, Marcos directs for candles to be lit, but Amuro offers to fix the lights instead. Marcos directs him to the roof. After spotting the solar panels, Amuro locates the warehouse, against warnings, and fixes the battery. Seeing the lights come on, the kids get excited. Astonished, Marcos hurries to the warehouse and wonders how Amuro fixed the power, but Amuro is confused, seeing it was never a difficult task. He tells them they can now turn on the lighthouse. Eager, Marcos runs up the stairs and turns on what is actually a homing beacon. As the light begins to swirl, they smile, happy. At the same time, Doan sees the lights while returning and becomes anxious, knowing it spells trouble. The kids hurry outside, enthusiastic, to watch the light. Marcos thanks Amuro and shakes hands with him, finally acknowledging his contributions. Doan walks to the lighthouse, ignoring the kids, and tells Amuro he shouldn't have fixed the light. Just then, Amuro notices a gunperry approaching the lighthouse. As the gunperry prepares to touch down, Job directs his team to get in their mobile suits. Afraid, the kids ask Doan to take down the aircraft. Doan, with a determined look, tells them it's Amuro's comrades who have come to rescue him, but he intends to destroy them. Readying for battle, Doan sights the Southern Cross aircraft. Realizing it's his past catching up with him, Doan makes up his mind and asks Marcos to follow him. Sensing the fear in Kara and the kids, he asks her to keep them safe until he gets back. As he leaves, Amuro requests to come along and support the fight. Reluctant, Doan wonders if he can fight both the Southern Cross squad and his comrades to protect the children. Nonetheless, Amuro follows him, at least excited to get back his Gundam. Kai is terrified to see the Zeon Zaku descend from the aircraft. Just in time, the core booster shows up, breezing past Doan, Marcos, and Amuro in their speedboat. Ms. Sele alerts Slegger to the presence of the Zeon Zaku. Quickly, Slegger and the core booster shoot at them, but they evade their attacks. Feeling uneasy, Lieutenant Adler directs the rest of his team to drop into the water and swim to the shore to complete their mission. As they descend, their aircraft get blown up. After Doan dives into the water, Marcos warns Amuro that it's going to be a tough swim underneath the rocks. Amuro nods in readiness. As they dive into the water and begin to swim deep, Amuro starts to struggle and suffocate. When Marcos notices, he holds him and pulls him along. Finally getting to the surface, Marcos helps Amuro out of the water. In the meantime, Kai and Hayato continue to attack the Southern Cross, afraid but relentless. Marcos on the other hand despairingly tries to revive Amuro. Suddenly, Doan appears in his Zaku and marches out, ignoring them to join in the fight outside, with Marcos merely looking on in awe. Outside, Kai is frustrated at being unable to shoot down the Zeon Zaku as the Southern Cross squad slips easily through their attacks, charging at them. One blast from Danon separates Kai from Hayato. As Kai looks up, hopeless, he sights Slegger and core booster soaring in their direction. Finally cheerful, he smiles. As the core booster descends, damaged, it skids off the ground and sends Slegger flying into a rock, to Kai's despair. Lieutenant Adler comes charging at him, but turns on Hayato and destroys his Gundam, with Hayato barely escaping. Finally, Amuro comes awake, just in time before the emergence of two Zeonites, who've come to turn the system back on and perform the manual missile launch, as instructed. Marcos silences Amuro, desperate not to call attention, while watching Waldo descend from his Zaku and hurry off. Doan eventually arrives and stands in the way of his old comrades. Danon, who's been looking forward to this moment, goes on a rampage, firing at Doan, but he merely dances around the attack. After several clashes, Doan slays Danon, and he erupts in a nasty explosion. Meanwhile, Waldo successfully turns the system back on and prepares missiles for launch. When the ground begins to reverberate, Amuro and Marcos take advantage of the distraction and run off. However, Sango spots them and begins to trail them. As he fearfully checks behind a great curtain, Amuro comes charging at him in his Gundam and pierces the Zaku with a lightning thrust. When Waldo shows up, Amuro tramps on him. Back on the battlefield, Doan slays another former comrade. As the kids hurry to the basement, one kid struggles to drag a goat in. When the goat stubbornly breaks free and runs out, the kid runs after it, then the other kids run after him, trying to get him back. Eventually, they run into the white base forces and recover the goat. Kai tells them they've come looking for Amuro, to Kara's delight. Together, they run towards the battle and watch Lieutenant Adler swing at Don's Zaku and cut off the arm. As he attempts to strike a final blow, Amuro fires at him. Seeing Amuro, the kids celebrate. Annoyed, Adler attacks Amuro, then cleverly, Amuro baits him to the edge of the cliff and slays his Zaku apart. While celebrating the victory, the ballistic missile launches and ascends into the air. The Zeonites celebrate that the mission was a success. On the other hand, the Federation forces launch their own missiles at the ballistic missile. However, they're too late, as it breaks into several pieces. When Commander Gop appears, he merely takes a seat, looking unbothered, and then mysteriously, the smaller missiles begin to explode midair, a job perfected by Don. The Federation forces are dumbfounded. Dubious, General Gop says it looks like luck was on their side. Meanwhile, General Mkyov wonders why the targeted cities aren't destroyed. Then abruptly, he begins to laugh, realizing General Gop was right after all and telling him even Hitler had soldiers who disobeyed his commands, the same way Don defiled his. As Amuro prepares to leave, the kids watch him, sad. Amuro tells Don that he keeps getting drawn to the war as a result of the Zeon Zaku. Intending to change the situation, Amuro lifts up the Zaku and tosses it into the ocean. Finally back on the white base, Captain Bright commands that they depart for Belfast. As they fly across the Allegranza, the kids happily wave at them.